NoPrepSchool.com presents Mountains, a free online course for grades 3 through 5. A mountain is a natural landform that is significantly higher in elevation and altitude than the surrounding land around it. Mountains are categorized using a tree structure so that the major ranges are parents of smaller subgroups of mountains and individual peaks. For example, Pikes Peak in Colorado is part of the Front Range of the Southern Rocky Mountains. Sometimes the mountain ranges are so large that there are many subgroups. Mountains make up about 1/4 of all the landmass on Earth. Elevation is defined as the height to which something rises above a point of reference. Usually, the point of reference is the ground or sea level. Altitude is the height above sea level and is used to describe how high something is in space, but it can also be used to describe the distance between two objects, just like elevation. Altitude is measured using an altimeter, which registers air pressure. Altitude is used a lot in aviation to let pilots know how far they are from the ground. There is no set altitude or elevation required for a landform to be considered a mountain. Instead, the term is usually applied due to the difference in the height of the mountain as compared to the flat land in the area. This means that mountains can be 23,000 feet high or 3,500 feet high. The bottom of the mountain is called the base, while the top of the mountain is called the peak. Some mountains have many peaks, while others will only have one. Another factor used for determining if a landform is a mountain is the term slope. Slope is the steepness of the side of a mountain, and it is measured in degrees. Degrees are how we measure angles and are based on a circle. One circle has 360 degrees. The higher the slope in degrees, the steeper the side of the mountain. Mountains all share some of the same characteristics, such as they rise above the surrounding area, they have a hot sunny side and a cool shady side, they have different types of animals and vegetation grouped together in life zones, they are often a source of freshwater rivers and streams due to ice melt, and they are made up of rock, the ecliptic. The different sides to a mountain are critical for understanding mountain ecology. In the northern hemisphere, the sun travels along a path across the sky called the ecliptic. The ecliptic is an imaginary line, but an important one. It marks the path of the moon, the planets, and eclipses. Like the sun and the moon, the stars in the night sky move across the ecliptic in an east to west direction. Since we know that the Earth actually rotates around its axis, we also know that it isn't the stars that are moving. Rather, it is the turning of the Earth which makes the stars appear to move. The stars are grouped into constellations, and 12 of these constellations make up the zodiac. These 12 constellations travel along the ecliptic with the sun. The sun and moon also move across the zodiac, and every month the exact position of the sun in the zodiac changes due to the Earth's orbit of the sun. But one thing stays the same. When you watch the sun move across the daytime sky, it always appears to be traveling in the south. That's if you're in the northern hemisphere. A loafing shed, like this one pictured above, is a shelter commonly used for pasture horses. They are always placed with the open end facing south to take advantage of the direct sunlight in cold weather. This pathway of the sun has consequences on the mountain because it means that the south side of the mountain gets more sunlight than the north side of the mountain. The result of this phenomenon is that there will be different species of plants, different types of soil, and different temperatures on the south side when compared to the north side of the mountain. To complicate matters further, as you travel up the side of the mountain, the climate and living conditions also change. This happens because the temperature decreases the higher up the mountain you go. In fact, there is a scientific correlation of a temperature decrease of 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit with every 1,000 feet of increased altitude. If you look at this picture, you can notice that there are different types of plants on the side of the mountain as you go up. And when you get to the top, there are no plants growing. That's called a tree line. Let's take a look at what this elevation change means. Temperature at the base of the mountain is 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, if we go up 1,000 feet, then the temperature changes to 46.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Because remember, for every 1,000 feet, there's a difference of 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit. If we go up 2,000 feet, we're now at 43 degrees. If we go up 5,000 feet, we're now at 32.5 degrees. If you go up to the top of Mount McKinley, which is approximately 20,000 feet, then the temperature is minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets really cold when you go up. If the temperature changes with each 1,000-foot increase in altitude, then it only makes sense that the plants and animals that can live on the mountain will also change. For example, a deer that finds the lower elevation near the mountain's base pleasant and with enough food for survival would not be able to survive at an elevation of 10,000 feet. There would be different food sources, perhaps no food sources, different heat requirements, and different shelter requirements. Mountains often receive more precipitation than the low-lying areas at the base. If the mountains are located in a wet area and the peaks high enough, there is often a large amount of snow during the winter months. This snow melts in the spring and feeds the rivers and streams that run down into valleys and to the base. This part of the stream is called the headwater. Mountains are all made up of rock, although the exact type of rock will vary. Mountains are not made up of living things, even though living things such as plants and animals will live on them. Some mountains are made up of volcanic rock and are in fact inactive or sometimes active volcanoes. Others are made up of granite, which is a popular substance to use as a kitchen countertop. It is actually the solid form of liquid minerals such as quartz and feldspar. Still others are made up of layers of different rocks such as limestone, sandstone, shale, and dolomite. Topography is the study of the Earth's surface and shape. A topographic map is a way to show mountains and valleys on a flat piece of paper. Topographic maps have many uses, such as planning for roads and understanding the difficulty of hiking trails in the mountains. Topographic maps show where the hills and valleys are, as well as how steep the side of a mountain is. Oceanographers use topographic maps to better understand the valleys of the ocean floor. A contour map is a two-dimensional representation of elevation, while a relief map is a three-dimensional representation of elevation. The Earth's surface has many different physical features called terrain or landscape. The terrain makes it appear flat in places and bumpy in others. The topography of a given area is the way in which the terrain is figured out by looking at position and elevation. Relief is the term used to describe the changes in elevation in a given region. As a result, flat plains are considered to have relatively little relief, while mountains have high relief. Topographic maps show relief based on elevation using contour lines. Contour lines connect all points with the same elevation. Lines that are close together show steep relief, while those spread further apart show more gradual relief. The closer the lines are to each other in a contour map, the steeper the terrain. There are 5 main types of mountains: fold mountains, fault block mountains, volcanic mountains, dome mountains, and plateau mountains. Fold mountains are formed when the upper layers in the Earth's crust fold over each other. This occurs when two continental plates move towards each other or when one continental plate moves towards an oceanic plate. The Earth is made up of 7 major plates and 7 minor plates. Tectonic plates are constantly on the move. The fastest plate moves about 6 inches per year, while the slowest moves less than 1 inch per year. Most plates are part continental and part oceanic. Like the North American plate, where the western half is mostly the North American continent, but the eastern half is part of the Atlantic Ocean basin. The Pacific plate is almost all oceanic. Fault block mountains form due to cracks in the earth called a fault. A fault is one place where earthquakes can happen on a regular basis. Essentially, they build mountains by moving large blocks of rock either up, called horst, or down, called graben, in relation to the ground. Block mountains form in the opposite way when compared to fold mountains. When the earth cracks open, it breaks the rock up into blocks, and these are the parts of the earth that can move up and down to create a mountain. Volcanic mountains are formed due to volcanic activity and are made primarily out of hardened magma. Magma is a liquid rock beneath the surface of the earth. When the volcano erupts, the magma exits the earth in the form of lava. Mountains form when the rock layers and the lava layers pile up on top of each other. Dome mountains occur due to magma as well, but in this case the magma does not erupt in lava, but instead pushes its way up towards the surface without actually breaking the surface. This causes the rock layers on top of the magma to bulge upward like a dome. Plateau mountains are mountains formed in a traditional way, but over time are flattened by erosion. Now we're going to talk about 9 mountain ranges across the world. The Ural Mountains, the Himalayas, the Brooks Range, the Atlas Mountains, the Rocky Mountains, the Alps, the Great Dividing Range, the Andes Mountains, and the Transantarctic Mountains. The Ural Mountains are located in western Russia and run north to south between the Kara Sea and the Kazakh steppes along the northern border of Kazakhstan and geographically split the European continent from the Asian continent. The Ural region is in the southern part of the Ural Mountains, and the biggest city in that area is Yekaterinburg. Yekaterinburg is also the 4th largest city in Russia. It was named after Peter the Great's wife, Yekaterina, who later became Catherine I. Peter the Great ruled Russia from 1682 to 1725. Yekaterinburg is called the window to Asia because the city spans the border between Europe and Asia. The Himalayas are a large mountain range in Asia and separate the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan Plateau. Mount Everest, the Earth's tallest mountain peak, is located in these tall mountains. The Himalayas contain more than 100 peaks that are at least 23,000 feet tall. The tallest peak in the U.S., Mount McKinley, is only 20,320 feet tall. Kathmandu is the biggest city in Nepal. It is also a major cultural center for the region. This means it has art and history museums, theater, and music. Food is also an important part of the city's culture. The staple food of many in Kathmandu is a rice and lentil soup called dal bhat. Brooks Range is a large mountain range that spreads from the northwestern to northeastern corners of Alaska. These mountains are mostly uninhabited, but there are a few native Alaskan villages tucked away in them. The highest peak is Mount Chamberlain, which stands at 9,020 feet. Fun fact: the Brooks Range is home to 3 caribou herds: the Western Arctic, the Central Arctic, and the porcupine. The Aurora Borealis, also called the Aurora, or the Northern Lights, or the Southern Lights in the Southern Hemisphere, is a light display in the sky in the Arctic and Antarctic regions due to electrons and protons from the solar wind interacting with the Earth's magnetic field. It is a common occurrence in the Brooks Range. The Atlas Mountains are located on the northeastern part of Africa and extend through the countries of Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. The Atlas Mountains separate the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean coastlines from the Sahara Desert. The highest peak is Topographic Mountain, which stands at 13,671 feet in southwestern Morocco. Morocco is a well-traveled country in northern Africa that is nestled in the Atlas Mountains. Casablanca is the largest city, though Rabat is the capital city, but Marrakesh is the city many Western travelers want to see because of its rich history and ancient walls surrounding the original city center. The traditional architecture in Marrakesh is also unique and interesting. The Rocky Mountains run north to south across the western part of the North American continent in both the United States and Canada. The highest peak is Mount Elbert and is located in Colorado. The Continental Divide lies within the Rockies and separates the watershed which drain to the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. The Rockies spread across 6 U.S. states: New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. Yellowstone National Park is also part of this mountain range. The Denver region in Colorado lies along the Rocky Mountains Front Range and has almost 3 million people. It is the cultural center of Colorado and has a Major League Baseball team, the Rockies, a professional hockey team, the Avalanche, and a professional football team, the Broncos. The Denver metropolitan area is one of the most populated areas along the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains. The Alps is a range that extends through France, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Italy, and Germany. The highest mountain peak is Mount Blanc, which is located on the French-Italian border and stands 15,782 feet. The Alps cover an area of about 85,000 square miles. The Jungfraujoch rail station in Switzerland is the highest point in Europe at a little over 11,000 feet above sea level. It's connected to the top of the Europe building where tourists visit to see the beautiful mountain scenery, dine in restaurants, and hike the glacier. The left picture shows the train and the right picture shows a tunnel inside the glacier. The Great Dividing Range along the eastern coast of Australia is also called the Eastern Highlands. This range stretches for more than 2,175 miles and contains a selection of mountain ranges, plateaus, and upland areas. Most of this mountain range lies within the Australian National Park System. There are many cities and towns and lots of roads, so it is a well-visited mountain range. The Andes is the longest mountain range above the surface of the ocean. It runs for about 4,300 miles long and has an average height of about 13,000 feet. The Andes are home to the world's highest volcanoes and cover the countries of Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Venezuela. The highest peak is Aconcagua, which stands near the Argentina and Chile border at 22,835 feet tall. One of the most famous places in the Andes Mountains is the ancient Inca city of Machu Picchu. The peak overlooking the city is called Huayna Picchu and is almost 9,000 feet above sea level. The Inca built the city around 1450 AD, but once the Spanish conquistadors came, it was abandoned. The Transantarctic Mountains divide East Antarctica from West Antarctica and cross the entire continent from the Ross Sea to the Weddell Sea. They span approximately 2,175 miles. Due to the extreme temperatures near the South Pole, the animal life is limited to penguins, seals, and birds that live along the coastline, and lichens, algae, and fungi for plant life. Lichens are really a combination of life forms. It's a plant, usually green algae, which forms a symbiotic relationship with fungi. Symbiotic means each organism requires the other to live. Fungi are not able to perform photosynthesis to create a constant source of food like plants can because they don't have chlorophyll. So they use the green algae to do this for them. The fungus kind of acts like a farmer, but they give back to the algae too. They give the plant a secure environment in which to thrive and grow.